We've got one attendee.
Yeah, for those of you joining us on the recording today, we are hosting this session live. So we've just started the webinar and we're waiting for attendees to join us, and then we will get started in just about a minute.
We'll get started in just a moment. I appreciate those who have gotten here right at 12, but I do realize as many of us are juggling running a dispensary in the background and trying to jump on this call. So we'll get started in just a moment. Okay, you know what, in the interest of time, we'll get started. I just want to introduce everybody who's on the call to start with. So thank you for those who are joining us today with some interest in running for the upcoming elections. There's several seats that are opening up, and we're very pleased with the interest that's been shown. So my name is Fazal Khan. I'm the registrar here at the college, and joining me in co-presenting is Ms. Amy Stein, our deputy registrar. Also on the line today are Ms. Neda Mohammed-Zada, who is a board of director with the college for the last 8 years and is actually our current vice chair, and Mr. Derek Summers, who's been elected just recently in January of 2022 and has been an appointed member for 5 years. We also have from our team, Ms. Ananya Verma, who is assisting us with technology. So I'll go over a few things that are a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, if you have any questions, feel free, as this is a webinar format, you've got two avenues. You've got the chat box to the right of the screen, and there's also a Q&A feature at the bottom ribbon on Zoom. So if you do a Q&A question, it's submitted directly to us. None of the participants can see your question. Yeah, you can go a step further and submit your question anonymously as well with that feature, or you can put your question or comment in the chat box, and we will be monitoring both and either answering them as we go along or possibly saving them for the end of the presentation. Aside from that, we just wanted to remind you, if you're just joining us, that we are going to be recording the session. So if you've come in partway through, later on, we'll be posting this presentation on our website for you to sort of see in its entirety. So to start with, let's get started. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. So the College of Opticians operates on the traditional lands of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. The college acknowledges and respects that these lands are now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who continue to experience the impact of colonization. The college also acknowledges that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. So once again, we've talked about how you can access the chat feature. So right now, let's move on to a little bit of an overview of what we'll be covering today. So we'll chat a little bit about what the function of the college is, a little bit about what board members do in their role as part of the governance of the college. We'll talk about board member competency and characteristics. That's a bit of a new territory for us. We'll chat a little bit about benefits of involvement, and then finally we'll do an overview of the election process and the pre-election screening interview. So starting off with, this may seem pretty evident to you, but often there is some confusion between the college and the association. So I thought we'll start off with talking about the differences between the two organizations. So as you probably all know, the college, membership is mandatory for college, to the college as an optician. So if you want to practice opticianry in the province of Ontario, you've got to be registered with the college. The college's mandate is to protect the public interest. And as the regulatory body, we set and monitor entry to practice requirements. We also resolve and receive and resolve complaints, hold discipline hearings where necessary in cases where it's beyond the complaints level. We promote continuing competence through the execution of the quality assurance program, and we establish and maintain standards of practice that govern the profession. When you contrast it with the association, membership in the association is not mandatory, it's voluntary. So you can choose only to be a member with the college. The professional association is actually the voice for opticians. It's the advocacy arm or the advocate for the profession. They provide several features or benefits, including continuing education, professional liability insurance, and they're a good source to find out what's happening in the industry. So the big thing is, if you're thinking about issues that are affecting opticianry, you've got to make sure that it has a public interest theme to it. If it's something that's an issue, that's an advocacy issue for the profession, the college is not the venue for that. You would be better off with the professional association. Okay, so we can move on to the next slide. So what does the board do? So the board is split up into two pieces, the board of directors. So the college is split up into two pieces, the board of directors and the administrative arm. So we'll talk about what the board does, as the elections are for board seats. So the biggest thing the board does, and we've just met as a group a few months ago, is set the strategic direction for the college. That guides us typically 3 to 5 years. The focus, as I had mentioned earlier, is all about the public. And as a board member, there are fiduciary responsibilities or duties that you have. You've got to be prepared for your meetings. There's accountability. There's a loyalty to the organization. So oftentimes this is just one of the things, the many things that you might be doing. Obviously, you're in the field, and there'll be times where there might be a conflict between what's good for your organization and what's good for the college as a public interest group. So you've got to make sure that if you're going to be a board member, that comes first, loyalty to your role as a board member. Confidentiality is a must. And also making sure that you manage your conflicts of interest. There are, as I said, many hats that you wear and many roles that you fulfill. So there's often times where it might not be appropriate for you to be participating in certain conversations or decision-making. So we ask you to be mindful of it and disclose those. Risk management is also a large piece of it, and things like confidentiality are intertwined with it. And A lot of times right now, the board members also have roles aside from doing board meetings, but they are also involved in being assigned committees. And so there's committee work, and there's several committees of the college that you can be placed on. So we can go on to the next slide. So we'll talk a little bit about board member core competencies. And Amy, I believe you're talking about that.
I am. Thank you. So board member core competencies. The reality of today's boards in the regulatory environment is that there's an expectation that board members, even where they are elected to sit on that board, that they bring with them certain core competencies. And the college's board of directors has established these competencies itself. And these are competencies that anyone who decides to run for election must be screened for before the election takes place. And we'll talk a little bit later about what that screening process looks like. But first, we wanted to talk about what these core competencies are. And these are the 5 competencies that have been identified as the board as being what they expect every board member to bring to the table when they stand for election. So the first one is passion and having a public service orientation. So Fazal spoke just before about the role of the board and how the role and the college exists to protect the public interest. So that's the main reason why this is the first core competency, having a passion for serving that public interest and using that lens. So it's being passionate about the opticianry profession and about serving the public. It's understanding and supporting the college's mandate to regulate the profession in the public interest. The next core competency is exemplified integrity. So that means that as a board member, you demonstrate that you're willing to do what's right and what's wrong and reject what's wrong, pardon me. And even if doing so will be unpopular or carry consequences to you personally, or sometimes even professionally. And the third competency is being unbiased and demonstrating an open mind. So that's trying to identify and avoid unconscious bias in your decision making. That's something that every person is susceptible to, but as a board member, your job is going to be to try and recognize that and take that into account before you let it affect your decision making. So that also means being willing to listen to all the facts before you make a decision. And being willing to change your mind if new information presents itself. So let's just load these up. So the fourth competency is critical judgment and decision making. So as a board member, you're going to be asked to make a lot of important decisions, and in your committee work as well if you're involved on committees. And being able to think critically about the information that you are presented with and make a decision based on that information is really important. Some of these issues can be challenging. So you need to be comfortable making decisions that are challenging and that are going to impact opticians in various capacities. And finally, the fifth competency is collaboration and inclusion. So that's supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion in your work, being willing to work together and consider different views and opinions with the people that you're working with. So these are the core competencies that everyone brings to the table, but there are some other attributes that board members are important to being board members. So I'm going to turn that back over to Fazal to speak to those.
Okay, so other board member characteristics, it would be great if you had some of these, but these are things that can be developed and often do develop with your time here. Leadership and strategic thinking. As I said earlier, a lot of what the board does is guide the college, the organization with the strategic plan. So high-level strategic thinking is important. As part of your fiduciary duties, your risk management, you'll be looking at the board, the college's operating statements, financial statements. So a degree of financial literacy is great. Again, if you don't have a lot of this type of background, not an issue. We're not looking for chartered accountants or anything like that. We will provide training in these areas. Interpersonal and strong communication skills are definitely very helpful. You are working as a team, and you're working with both the staff and other fellow board members and other committee members, appointed members. So strong interpersonal and communication skills are an asset. Previous board and governance experience is often very helpful. Again, you'll develop it. We give you extensive training throughout your time with us. But for instance, if you've served on a condo board or something like that, this type of experience is very useful and helpful. Technical skills these days especially are becoming more and more of a valued asset. As you see today, we're doing our format here on Zoom. And since the beginning of the pandemic, we have moved to remote meetings for the majority of meetings over the past 2 years. We are transitioning slowly as things open up to hybrid meetings with some people in person and some people participating remotely. So again, some ability with technical is important. Communications is done by email a lot, and so responding to polls and email requests and things like that is an important skill. Flexibility, committed, and available. So if you are signing on for this, it is important that we are able to get a hold of you, that you're able to make yourself available for us to participate in the various duties. Giving you a bit of an idea, as a board member, you're meeting about 4 to 5 days in all-day meetings. Typically, there's 4 board meetings throughout the year, and they're between a day, day and a half, or possibly at the most 2 days. There are training sessions, and generally, as you're coming up for a board meeting, there's a bit of prep that takes place. You've got some meeting materials to read. So if you're having a board meeting day, you typically, for a full day that you're going to be participating, you can expect about half a day to spend in preparation, reading the materials. And these materials are sent minimum 1 week in advance so that you have time to prepare. Board members also sit on typically 1 to 2 committees. We can work with you on that depending on your time availability, if you've got more or less time. And committee work, generally, you'll have about 6 to 8 meetings per year, and these meetings are usually set around a month in advance. And again, we assess what skills are needed on the board from time to time and set up training. So we won't sort of leave you high and dry. We will help you develop skills if you don't have them. So Amy, we can maybe move on to the next slide. What's involved?
Okay, so Fazal already started speaking a little bit about what's involved as a board member. So just talk a little bit about that. So as we mentioned, there's a certain number of meetings that you'd be expected to attend. Board meetings are often full day, or sometimes they're 1.5 days long. There are 4 of them a year, so we've indicated 4 to 6 days. Now, committee meetings can vary quite a bit depending on the number of committees that you sit on. So some of the committees meet very frequently, some of them meet less frequently. Some of those meetings can last as little as 30 minutes, or they could be the better part of a day. So before you make any decisions on committees, you would be sent a bunch of information about what each committee does and the approximate time commitment for each one. So as you can see, we sort of estimated either, on the low end 6 to 8, but realistically 7 to 15, depending on your involvement. And that's days that you might be called in for a meeting, whether most committee meetings are probably 1 to 2 hours, but some of them might be shorter and some of them might be longer. And then, of course, you are involved in a number of training days. So we've indicated that. So sort of all in all, you're looking at about a time commitment of between 14 and 26 days a year, depending on the number of committees that you sit on. Or if as a member of the discipline committee, you might be called on to sit on a hearing panel, which can range in the number of days as well. So it is a not insignificant time commitment, which is why we wanted to highlight that. And most of these meetings do require between 1 and 3 hours of preparation. So just carving out the time for that. And of course, we make sure that you have those materials ahead of time. Now, a couple more things to know. As Fazal mentioned, most of our meetings are being held virtually via Zoom right now. So there is that tech element to it and access through that means. But there is a movement towards some hybrid. And if you're thinking about joining the board at this point in time, there's still some uncertainty in the next coming years, but we do anticipate there being the need for some in-person attendance at the college here in Toronto. So when you're thinking about that, just know that board members who reside outside the GTA, you do have your travel and accommodations covered to attend in-person meetings and can expense your meals, etc. Also, just a note that most meetings are held during regular business hours. So these are not evening and weekend commitments. This is typically during the day. So there is a need for some flexibility in that regard. If you do live in the GTA and will be attending in-person meetings, there is a per diem to cover certain expenses. So we're going to chat next about the benefits of being involved in the board, and I will turn that over to Fazal.
Thanks, Amy. So I would say, also being a past board member, there are several benefits, and we'll be hearing from some of our board members, but there are many benefits of being involved with the college. It's certainly, there is a growth trajectory that's varied. You'll have the choice of how much or how little you want to be involved. And how much you want to take on leadership roles. For instance, we've got Netta on the line, who's in a leadership position. Both Derek and Netta are in leadership positions with our executive. Netta is our vice chair this year. So, you can remain at the board level. You could run for executive. You can run for chair and vice chair. So it's varied, and your comfort will build over time. It's a great opportunity to gain skills. We do a lot of good training here, and these skills are very transferable back to your workplace. We've been doing a lot of diversity, equity, and training in that area. We've done a lot of training in meeting management, in facilitative chair training. So these are excellent skills that you can take back to your workplace. It's a really good opportunity to contribute to public safety and the way the public sees the profession and trust the profession. At the end of the day, this is not a volunteer position. No one's getting rich over this, but at the same time, you are compensated for your time so that you're not out if you're having to give time up from work. So we do provide compensation for your meeting time, your preparation time, and any expenses that are associated with attending, whether it be travel into the college or meals, things like that. So we have everything laid out. So, your time is covered. We'll talk a little bit more now on diversity, equity, inclusion and our strategic plan. So I'm going to turn that back actually to Amy.
So we've mentioned diversity, equity, inclusion a couple of times during this presentation. So this has been a major focus of the board of directors over the last number of years, and they have invested a lot in training and in development of a full diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan. And this sets out a number of goals that are both internal to the organization and external in terms of how the college wants to regulate the profession to make sure that it's serving the diverse population of this province in a way that's inclusive and prioritizes equity. So we wanted to highlight for you some of the strategic goals that have been identified by the board that are specific to its board of directors and its governance processes. So the first is ensuring that the process for board and committee selection is competency-based and barrier-free. So we spoke about the competencies before, and these are all considered to be behavioral competencies, meaning they're not based on your past experience. If you've never sat on a board before, that is okay. The idea is that you're bringing to the table skills that are, based on these core skills that are not connected to a specific experience. And ensuring that this process is barrier-free is also very important to the board. So if anyone has any concerns about the election process, about the screening process, we do encourage you to reach out. And even about sitting on the board as a member, if there's any thoughts about it, accommodations or any other needs that someone might have that you might be thinking is an impediment to running, we do hope you will reach out so that we can work with you on those. The next is ensuring opportunities and resources for both registrants and non-registrants with diverse backgrounds to apply for board and committee positions. So again, this is something that is highly valued by the board, and encouraging people from equity discerning groups to consider applying and joining and becoming part of the governing body. And finally, ensuring that diversity, equity, and inclusion is integrated within the internal governance structure and decision-making processes of the board. So this has been a very concerted effort of the board through training and through policy development to make sure that this is central to all decisions that get made at the board level. So if you have any other questions about the college's diversity initiatives, we encourage you to reach out to us directly. But for now, we're going to move on back to Fazal to talk a little bit about the election process itself.
Okay, thank you, Amy. So I won't go into any crazy depth over this, but I'll just do a high-level overview. If you have any specific questions, do put them in the chat or in the question and answer box. So the biggest thing is download the elections and nomination guide. It's got a lot of FAQs in there and content. So that would be step one. We have a corner on the website that speaks to elections, and we've got this information consolidated there. You'll need to do the pre-election training module. So this is a part of the jurisprudence handbook, and it's optional to do on a regular basis, but if you are running for the board, it's mandatory to complete that. Now, the nice thing is you're going to get one PG hour of continuing education for doing that, so it won't go to waste. If you've already done it before in the last, you can't count it more than once every 3 years. And if you are running for the board and you've already claimed it once, you'll need to talk to the quality assurance department, and they will reset this on your profile so that you can retake the test. This module essentially gives new directors a base level of knowledge before joining the board. So it's a foundation before running for the board. The next thing is August 29th is the submission of nominations. So gather up your required information and get your nomination papers signed by at least 3 opticians. Make sure that they're in your district. So if you have any questions, you can always call the college to make sure about that type of detail. And we've got here that we have to submit this by August 29th by noon. Then we will contact you about pre-election screening interviews, which are set for September 14th. So that will be a panel interview once we get your package, and it'll be going over the competencies that Amy had mentioned earlier. Voting takes place October 14th to November 28th. And it is going to be, as we've had now for several years, it'll be electronic. Basically, the portal will open. If you're eligible to vote, it'll show that you can vote now. One thing that'll be interesting this year is that there is an all Ontario riding plus local ridings or districts. And so you may end up having the opportunity to vote for 2 different board seats. Amy, I just wanted to check with you as far as our window for voting.
Yeah, I was just going to notice that there is an error there. So our apologies. The voting is going to take place from October 14th to October 28th, not November 28th.
So it's a 2-week period.
It's a 2-week period. That's right.
Yeah, perfect. So now, as I said, the guidelines are there. Everything's on the website. If you've got questions, you can email us at elections@collegeofopticians.ca. One of our team will get back to you and answer any questions, via email or via phone. Now, one thing is for sure, when you're sort of gathering your your nominations and things like that, or during the election window time, you've got to remember you're running to be a board member of this board. You're not campaigning to represent the interests of the people in the district. It's a difficult one to get your hand around, but it's not a political election. So you can't really be making promises that you're going to do things that are really an association matter. You can't be, this is just not the vehicle for advocating for opticianry needs. That's more the association, as we said. So be mindful of what your motive is and what you're conveying to your the registrants that are in your district. Because you can't make, you have to be careful about any promises or anything like that that you may not be able to fulfill. So Amy, we'll maybe move on to the next slide, which is the screening. So once you've got your package in and it's vetted and everything's complete, as I mentioned, there's the screening interview that will happen, the pre-election screening interview. So it's about a 40 to 60-minute interview with the screening committee. The nice thing about this is it is arm's length in the sense that these are people who are non-opticians that are on the panel. You're not being screened by your peers in this sense. So there's no favoritism or any bias that should be shown. The focus of this interview will be the 5 core competencies that Amy had mentioned. And again, we're targeting for about September 14th in this fall for this interview day. Okay. Sorry. So how to prepare, review the college's website, learn about what our mandate is, be ready to speak about things like why you're interested in joining the board and what you'd like to accomplish as a board member. And it would be really helpful for the screening committee to for you to show how you demonstrate the 4 core competencies. And always with technology, this is going to be a remote meeting. So maybe make sure that you've got the latest version of Zoom or all these things. Make sure your technology, your microphone, your cameras are all working, because it's a tight day with sometimes several people being interviewed. So it would be helpful if you're ready to go as soon as your appointment comes up. All right.
So I think we're going to be moving on now to some questions with our panel members, but I will just check in with Ananya first to see if there are any questions or comments from our participants.
No, it's all clear.
Okay, so then let's go ahead. I will, maybe we can get it started then. I'll go to the first question, and Fazal, did you want to take it from here?
Yeah, so Netta and Derek will get you to maybe unmute, and these questions will be aimed at you. So what interests you about getting involved with the college? Netta, Derek, either one of you want to go first? Netta, do you want to jump in, and I'll ask Derek the next question first?
Sure, sounds good. Hi, everyone. For me, when the most interesting thing was that as an independent optician, and with the passion that I have for patient care, I really felt that I could contribute to our regulatory body that has a very, especially the last 7 years I'm involved, that they have the public interests at heart. Excellent.
Thanks, Netta. Derek?
Well, for myself, I'm on. Okay, perfect. For myself, it's was simply a matter of similarly. I have always been very passionate about this profession, and I firmly believe that the best thing for the public health is an optician. We work collaboratively when we are at our best, and we do so much more than most of our patients unfortunately realize we do. But I think that being able to assist this profession in becoming stronger and becoming a better protector of the public is exactly why I wanted to be here. So that's why I've dedicated a significant portion of my life to it. So,
yes, you have.
Because you were kind there. You said 5 years. You didn't mention the other 6.
All the other years leading up.
All the other years leading up to that.
Yeah. Yeah, you've definitely put in your time. Okay, so move on to the next question. So this year's process is going to involve a panel interview. What did you do to prepare for the elections? What was involved with, let's say, campaigning or getting prepared? Derek, can we kick that over to you to start with?
Sure. I think I was actually the first year that we did the panel interview. I
That's right.
believe is when I went for and I'll be honest. The panel interview is a relatively scary process. You know, you're going to be interviewed about a lot of core values. Conveniently, they are shown to us early on, and you can look at them, and a little bit of self-reflection prepares you to go, is this me? If these core values are not you, then maybe you need to look at putting your time somewhere else. If these core values are you, then come join us.
Okay.
That's how I prepared.
Okay. And then like as far as your time campaigning, how did you
Time campaigning was always a bit of a challenge. I mean, we have an incredibly large province with incredibly large districts, and I know that you have the entire province as one of the districts this time around.
Yes.
I would suggest a lot of remembering all of those people you meet at every single convention that you go to, and chatting and making sure your name is out there and your reputation is out there. And might I also suggest that you talk to some of your sales reps? They see everybody, people. If they know you're out there and they believe you're strong, they can be some of your strongest allies in getting yourself elected.
Great. Excellent tips. Neda, how about you? How did you prepare for the panel interview? And then what did you do to prepare for the election itself?
For me, it was a bit different because I think for me it was about 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And definitely I had to read the nomination guide and fill out the form and submitting for the nomination, and we went through the election. That's how I started my journey with you guys. I cannot believe it. It's 7 years already. Same as Derek, you didn't mention the extra years after 3 years. But I really enjoy every moment that I have with you guys. And for the, again, I'm just going to echo what Derek mentioned. Definitely the sales rep are very, very, I would say, a strong voice. They know lots of opticians, and in other hand, the seminars is the best way to let everybody know that you are interested.
Great. Did either of you do anything with the list that was provided by the college? Derek?
I have previously done mailings.
Mhm.
I'll be honest, the effectiveness of the mailings were less. I've actually toured most of my district actually, and stopped in person actually was a little bit more effective, though that was quite the time crunch, time commitment to do it. The other thing I've noticed is that if you reach out to some of the organizers of different conventions, now I know we're online, but they will quite often give you an opportunity to speak. They will give that same opportunity to every single one of the people running, because I think they are firmly behind the idea of a fair process. But it is a good opportunity, and if you have it, please take advantage of it.
Great. Okay. What benefits have you experienced being involved with the board or the committees? Neda, maybe we'll start with you on that one.
For sure. I personally, now I have a deeper understanding and appreciation of governance, as well as I would say I really learned the separation of the responsibility. It really, really gets the operation running smoother and definitely better result.
Excellent. And Derek, how about yourself?
For myself, much as Neda said, it's the governance for sure. I will also say that the diversity, equity, and inclusivity training that we've done has been spectacular and has really changed my perspective on what I bring to a workplace and what I bring to life in general. There's been a lot of benefit from that. That would be my main ones there.
Thanks, Derek. Okay, what type of training have you received and enjoyed, hopefully enjoyed, and how have you developed your skills while on the job? Does anyone want to start with that? Derek, great.
I'll tentatively agree to enjoyed. Saying that, I have found value in all of the training that I've done. Diversity, equity, inclusivity, as I mentioned, just a complete paradigm shift. Understanding how governance works and the training that goes around that. Looking at different models of how you run an organization and what whether or not you're micromanaging it or whether or not you're letting it run itself. How you deal with the public. There are so many covered points in this that you pick up from working in an organization like this that it's hard to quantify them, but the training is ongoing. So don't ever think you're done. There will be more.
Yeah. And Netta?
I know that we did a couple of trainings that I really, really enjoyed. One of them, it was the diversity, equity, and inclusion. We did the Indigenous health and culture safety, which I really, really enjoyed. In the leadership and facilitating training, I really learned the critical judgment and thinking, and really helped me for decision making. Not that making it easier, but I have a definitely more clear view on the minute that I'm trying to make that decision, and how I can have an open mind about other pairs, the decisions and opinions. These are the things that I really, really enjoy learning in the leadership and facilitating training. And the other one that I really enjoyed was the monitoring and financial report training, which it's not only being part of the executive committee in the college, it helps in my own business as well. And I'm very thankful being through those trainings.
Wonderful, thank you. And then I think rounding up our last question, both of you have been around for quite a bit and have experienced many committees aside from the board work. So can you tell us about what committees you've sat on and maybe what you might have enjoyed the most while sitting on those on the board or the committees? Derek, start with you.
Sure. In all honesty, I think I've sat on every single committee at this point. My favorite committees have to date been discipline, which everybody sits on, both with my time as a panelist, but also as my time as the chair of the discipline committee as a whole. The benefits there were, again, being able to actively protect the public and being able to be fair with our membership. The other one that I have enjoyed my greatest time with, I can go on about a few of them, but quality assurance, that portfolio program that everybody loves so much. Yes, I was integral in building that thing and I stand behind it. I think it makes us better professionals, and I'm very excited about the fact that we have that opportunity and that tool in front of us. So I will publicly say that I stand behind that tool. So
yeah, and it, in your watch, it's definitely evolved.
It has. It is not the original document by any means. It has evolved. It has become a better document. The team that runs that document are spectacular, and if you get the opportunity to join us, you'll get to meet that team. But it's an evolving document, and it's an evolving thing to meet an evolving profession.
Yeah, perfect. And Netta, how about yourself?
Again, I was started with the governance committee. I remember it was my first time I started, and I was very nervous. It's a lot of reading, but I'm very happy I actually started with governance. It was a bit of a reading involved, but I really learned a deeper understanding of the college bylaws and the changes that actually took about, I would say it's still going on, but we started a big project in 2015, and some of the bylaws and all that. I really enjoyed governance committee at the start. I was involved in patient relation executive committee and ICRC, which is the inquiries, complaints, and the reports committee. And honestly, it's really hard to pick one. I enjoy every single of them. Some of them I stayed in more than one term, but it's very hard to pick. I really enjoy every single of them.
Wonderful. Thank you both. So I think that sort of concludes the formal presentation and the question part. I'm going to just double check. Are there any questions from our attendees? We've got a couple on the line. I just want to make sure if there's any questions that have arisen. Okay, none showing so far. So, with that, we do hope that you go forward with your nomination and run for the board for the seats that are coming up. But at the same time, if you're not ready to make the plunge and you want to dip your toe in the pond per se, Derek, is a perfect example of somebody who ran as an appointed member, applied as an appointed member with the board, and sat on many of the committees of the board. And so the only thing sort of missing from his plate was the actual board meetings. So it kind of reduced a little bit of the time involvement. So if you're not ready to go fully involved, you can start with committee work as an appointed member. You still have to go through the process of the competencies and things like that. You just don't have to run for the position. You apply to the board. So that's another way that you can get involved. There are other things that you can do to get involved with the college. You can apply to be an assessor for the quality assurance program. You can participate in the exams as an examiner. And certainly we always want to have your feedback when we post survey questions and stakeholder feedback sessions. So if you have any questions, you've got the email that we provided as far as elections related questions. You can call the college for any questions at any time. We're always happy to take those or your emails. So please, we invite any questions or anything like that. We thank the participants. Netta, Derek, thank you so much for giving your time over the lunch hour. Both of you are in your practices and are juggling all of these responsibilities. So we really appreciate you spending your time with our group. And to those who attended, thank you very much. To those who are viewing this later, we hope you find the presentation useful, but for any other questions or gaps, contact us. So thank you all, and we'll hope to see you in the fall. Take care.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Netta. Bye-bye.